Going into it, I was super excited to be there. Just the whole event, all the people, the whole town was, getting behind it, and it was just a fun, a lot of good energy going on. And the Friday night we had the Fat Tire Criterium, and if I had to be honest, it was a little defeating because I think I had like 2 laps to go, and the bullet went by. Catherine Pendrell goes by and she's like, "Come on, Pua." I was like, oh my god, I just got lapped. But the laps were short, but it was such a brutal course and my legs were not feeling any snappy. So I was a little defeated, but I knew 50 was going to be more my race, so I was pretty excited about it, and as ready as I could be at that point, so it was good. I did the start and the finish, and I also checked out the profile a bit, and from what I had written and the profile, I was thinking, this is a course that's really well suited for me if everything was firing on all cylinders, of course. And it had a little bit of everything. It had the technical, rocky, some big water bars, like fun single track, and then it had your straightforward 5-road climbs that, usually that's where you can put it down and stuff. So, and then the finish, I knew it was gonna kind of come down to whoever got to the top first, because it's almost the last 8 to 10 miles were pretty much straight downhill to the finish. So it was gonna be an interesting day for sure. I was pretty anxious because it's one of those things, you're kind of been waiting for it, and you're there a few days before, and then the countdown finally begins, and it's like, all right, this is it, it is what it is, so let's go pedal. And it was freezing that morning, so I was kind of, well, not that it mattered, but I was so cold. You get on the bike and you're just shaking, that's how cold I was, and I was trying to keep my bar straight, so it was miserable at that point. But I was anxious and ready to just get on my bike and start pedaling, because that's when all the nerves and everything just settles. I think that was the most maybe exciting, stressful finish ever, because it wasn't until when we hit that last single track at 10 miles that I started bridging the gap to Kelly, because the whole day the 3 of us kind of stayed within a few minutes of each other, but my legs just on the climbs, they just weren't going, and I couldn't bridge that gap on the climbs to her. But when we started descending, she was getting a little bit closer and closer and closer, and when we hit Cramp Hill, the last little short section that hurt so bad because it was short, steep, and a little bit loose and rocky, I was on her wheel, and I figured, okay, this is where I have to try and put it down and just see what she has, because the rest is to the, just straight down, and that was the only chance I had. So I gunned it a little bit, and when I kind of glanced back, she wasn't bridging the gap, so I just full throttle, I was like, all right, you have to just go for it. So I went, and I figured I had second, maybe not secured, but I knew if I stayed steady that I would be second. But first wasn't really on my mind, but I just kept going as hard as I could, trying to, take every turn correctly, because one little mistake and you were done. And when you hit the last, there's a turn off of the dirt onto the pavement, and there's a huge crowd of spectators there, and they're screaming and so excited, and they were kind of a blur, but I could hear the words, "She's right there." And I knew they were talking about Catherine, but when you're out there racing and you're hurting, and people are always saying things like, "Oh, it's just the finish is right there," or so-and-so is right there. You're doing great when you're not. And so I didn't know what right there meant. But when you hit the pavement, you have maybe 3.5, 4 miles to go. And it was one of those things where, okay, you have to put your head down into the headwind and just pedal as hard as you can, because it wasn't one of those where you coast down. and I had a police escort, and I put my head down, I think dug deeper than the whole race, and I caught up to these 3 guys that were going in, and they were yelling, "She's right there." So I kept going, and you get to almost the last long straightaway, and there was the blue and white jersey. And I don't know, I was in shock, but I was so excited, and I went by her, took the last right turn, well, one of the last turns, and it had this little incline, and when I glanced back, she was gone. And I don't want to say I thought I had it at that point, because I was still really nervous and didn't want to, you know, let go at all. So I hit it hard up that little hill, and then when I turned into the last straightaway to the finish, I looked back and there was no sight of her. So I was in disbelief when I went through, but it was one of the best feelings, I think, the best finishes that I've done. So it's super exciting. No, this one is probably one of my biggest, just because, you know, for me, this whole year is kind of a new beginning, and everything started late, and I kind of went into this year with no expectations and just more very, not taking it lightly, but just really having fun with it. And of course I went into this race with wanting nothing more than the win, but you know, there comes a time, especially when the whole hype was about Catherine and how, you know, she's ranked #1 and all this stuff, and of course you can't help but play little mind games with yourself sometimes, but this victory was pretty sweet, and I'll always remember it for sure. So well, Scott Tedrow, of course, and you know, he probably of anyone was the one person this year that made it all happen for me. Even, you know, maybe not everyone was doubting me, but it was such a last minute thing to bring me on board and just, you know, help me continue or pursue what made me happy, was riding my bike. And you know, of course he did it with no expectations, but so I'd like to thank him, and then the rest of the Sho-Air crew, and also Chuck at Rock and Roll, because he took my bike a few days before I took it into the shop before I left, and he dialed the bike in, and that was awesome. And of course Specialized for my bike, because it was awesome. And my adopted fake family here, that this is my home, and they've been awesome, helping me make this year come true for me too. And of course my family back at home, I can't forget my real family. But yeah, just everyone who supported me, and my friends and fans, everyone who writes me all the time, they're out there cheering for me. It was awesome.